Welcome to the Tron Church Talking Points podcast. It's very good to be here again. In the room, I'm with Fraser Nicholson. I nearly forgot your name. With Fraser Nicholson, whose name I know well, and Paul Brennan. I'm particularly sorry that we're not on camera, because what you need to know is that Paul Brennan has a new jumper.
This is big news. Big news.
Doesn't happen often.
Yeah, it's quite big news.
Once every 5 years, and I'll wear this every day for the next 5 years, basically.
You'll see it soon, everybody, so just hold on to your hats. We're just going to spend a little bit of time today chatting about a couple of issues that came up for us as we were thinking about Sunday's sermons. So just starting off with Joel's sermon from Galatians, and actually just the issue that's raised in the letter to the Galatians of the clearly really strong temptation there that there was there for people to be circumcised, for people for Judaism to be a necessary thing for all those who were coming to Christ. And it comes up in other New Testament letters as well. But it's actually quite tricky, isn't it, to work out just exactly how that applies in our day and age so that we really feel the weight of it, because nobody today is demanding circumcision that I know of. I mean, they probably are somewhere, but not in our context. So guys, what sort of things should we be on alert for?
It's tricky, I think, isn't it? Because you bump into this a lot. As you said, it's something you encounter a lot. That was the issue that Paul was tackling a lot. And I think what's at the root of it? What's the underlying problem? And as Joel has been pointing out to us, there's a addition to the gospel being added. These Jewish missionaries were coming along saying, you need something in addition to what the Apostle Paul's been saying to you in terms of the gospel message. And here's what you need: circumcision is the thing, and it's a sort of they're selling a truer Christian experience, or a deeper spirituality.
And you can see the attraction of that, can't you? Because someone who's well-meaning and keen inevitably wants the most that they can. Yeah,
and here's this relatively new Galatian church, and here's the big hitters from Jerusalem coming along, and they come with a certain gravitas. So you can imagine it was a very hard message to resist, and it promised greater certainty and a deeper spirituality, and trying to think through, okay, well, where might we encounter that?
Yeah, how does it manifest
today? And I think I was reflecting back to my own university days, and this is probably still an issue, but there were certain charismatic movements and folk who were in more charismatic churches. I remember in the Christian Union, they were sort of saying to me, look, you're missing out. Like you don't have the Spirit, or that's right, you've not been baptized in the Spirit, and you're missing out on all these experiences. And I remember that being probably the most obvious manifestation of that sort of attitude. So that's on one end of the theological spectrum. I think you can look to the other. I think I identify this a bit now, where I guess just because of the availability of information, you can listen to podcasts and find out all sorts of stuff, and the influences of sort of super reformed, which in and of themselves are generally pretty helpful, and I've benefited from listening to stuff, but it's when that's taken to extreme, actually that can lead to a similar sort of spiritual superiority, and a thinking that I've actually unlocked the secret here, and these other Christians haven't really, and what they need is this. And so that is something I think you observe a little bit, and you just start to see it around the place.
I think both of those things have in common the fact that they're making other people feel inferior.
Yeah, that's right.
They're missing out, and they're the two examples you've given are very different things, and yet have the same sort of result in feeling like actually I'm not experiencing the fullness. And maybe there is just the Christian life. It's not particularly kind of exciting all the time. It doesn't, there's not that much change. Maybe that's part of it. Like, well, I just thought when Paul was saying it's a young church, and you often see it in people who come to faith, and there's that excitement and that zeal, and then as you go on in the Christian life, you're like, oh, it's just more of the same. And I wonder if there's just a temptation for something extra, something different, because it's just like, oh, well, I've kind of heard that, and we've been doing this for a couple of years. And it's why, actually, it's one of the things I find it, so encouraging to have older saints in church and to speak to them who are in their 90s. And actually, I think in a lot of ways, the people who are in their 90s now must be really hard for them, because they grew up when church was big and where everyone was going to church, and society was much more Christianized, for all that there probably was a lot of nominalism, to, in a lifetime, to have got to where we are now, and yet to still be going on faithfully doing the ordinary things. And like, you speak to someone, and there is a kind of sadness and a frustration and a, coming to terms with that. But I'm just amazed that, well, it's God bringing them through it, but that they're persevering. And that's a real encouragement to me, not to, go seeking after other things and to go and look for other things, because actually they've come from something that did look much more exciting in a lot of ways, and it was bigger, and church, thousands of people going to the tent hall and, whatever it was. But, and they are still able to go. So, I think, I don't know where I started on that point, but maybe there's just that being content with the ordinary Christian life, and actually seeing that it is wonderful and exciting in different ways, even if not in visible, kind of tangible
in itself,
ways.
And as you don't need to sort of bounce off it, but actually dive down deep and be captivated. Was it you said on Sunday at some point, or maybe it was Joel, just look at the Lord and be captivated by him, rather than looking for something else to kind of supplement or add on, because actually what you're doing is demeaning and diminishing.
And like some of these things start off as good things, and it might start off as a healthy pursuit of,
almost inevitably, otherwise they wouldn't be quite so
tempting. But then it's, when those things go from being a helpful kind of thirst for knowledge or for understanding, or to learn more, to understand the Bible better, and they become you're not a proper Christian unless you need to have studied Calvin inside and out, and you need to be able to whatever it might be. If it becomes that, again, looking down on other people and making them feel lesser, rather than how can
I'm on the inside of this circle and you're.
And this is helping me to sort of build up my brothers and sisters, and to help be part of the church growing in various ways, rather than just seeking for your own kind of personal growth, and like personal growth in a bad way, like a prideful sort of way, I guess.
Yeah. I'm just thinking about what you were saying about the Christian life is often a very sort of, it feels very ordinary. It's quite humdrum, slow burn. I mean, it's not humdrum. Don't hear me wrong. It is a long, slow process. I remember Edward saying once, this is a bit of a lay-by people, Edward saying once, about 20 odd years ago, I'm pretty sure he was preaching at the Tron before he'd even moved to Glasgow. And he said, if you want convictions like oak trees, and you think, well, yeah, of course I do. He said, well, then read your Bible and go to church for the next 30 years. And you will have conviction. You think, oh, yeah, that's it.
It's not a shortcut to that.
No, there's no stir-fry version of this, just long, slow. But just that makes us think a bit about the the idea of the battle in Joshua, and the kind of battle that we are in, because you were saying, Paul, two errors is that we think there is no battle at all, or that we think, there's a battle, but actually we're losing, and the gospel is losing, and therefore the Lord is losing. So let's just talk about the battle for a little bit. You had something to say about the battle and prayer, Fraser, I think.
Yeah, I think, Paul, you're saying one of the sort of ways which we engage in battle, and picking up on the Ephesians 6 language, is, is prayer and being at the prayer meeting. And again, that's something which looks very ordinary. Prayer meetings on Wednesday this week, so anyone can come and see it. And it doesn't look like anything impressive. It's 100 odd people in a room. we hear a bit of news from people around the world, and then we sit and pray one at a time. And to any sort of outside onlooker, that classic thing, if someone landed from Mars and were like, what are these people doing? It looks like it's doing nothing. But that's actually the way which we're engaging in spiritual warfare. And that's the weapons we're brandishing, not swords. And I think when I hear the language of spiritual warfare, what you often hear talked about is you think about spiritual oppression and demonic things and spiritual attack and being under this kind of warfare, and that all sounds quite dramatic, and it sounds quite far off and distant in our culture, I think, especially. But actually, these spiritual realities, they are real, but the way that we're engaging in them is just in simple prayer, coming before God in prayer. And even when our prayers aren't the most eloquent and we're at the prayer meeting and you're sort of trying to fumble your way through a prayer and it doesn't sound very impressive, it doesn't look very impressive, but that it is impressive, and I guess because of who we're praying to. And you made that point as well, Paul, that the God that we're praying to is the God who made the waters of the Jordan stand up in a heap so that people could walk across, and he's the God that when they just marched around blowing the trumpets, good instrument though the trumpet is,
fine instrument, the best,
that the walls could come down, and that's our God who's doing these amazing things. And
we could do with spending a bit more time thinking not about how I'm praying, but the God who's on the other end of the prayers and their reception in heaven, and the fact that he is at work, he is sovereign, he is ruling, and commands us to pray, and that's how he works through the prayers of his people. And actually, an older saint sitting in the prayer meeting, speaking to the Lord of heaven and earth. And actually, if we thought about that, not about us, a bit more, we'd be much more encouraged to. You wouldn't want to miss the prayer meeting.
Yeah. And that's like, I think, Paul, again, you were making the point that, when God is at work and God is sovereign and in control of these things, one might be tempted to think, oh, well, we don't need to bother because he's got it and he's doing it. But there's just something wonderful in the way that God works, isn't there? And that he is sovereign and in control and is working out his purposes and has, ordained all that is going to come to pass. And yet he, wants to involve us, and we get to be involved in that. It's not, we've got to go to the prayer meeting, suppose we ought to, but like we get to go and to be a part of that. And he loves to hear us, echoing his thoughts and asking him for things. And that's just a wonderful thing. Willie talks about it in his Why We Pray book as well. Recently republished Tron books, but
nice plug.
But it's really who we're praying to. And again, I think the more you think of prayer in those terms, the more you're encouraged to do it. So I think that's a really helpful thing.
And one thing it would be certainly great for us all to be engaged in praying for is our Christmas services coming up, and just asking the folks that we know and who are around about us to be coming along and praying for courage for that. Somebody was telling me on Sunday evening that she'd plucked up the courage to ask somebody. Like she'd burst into tears about something else and then plucked up the courage to ask this person to come. I was like, well done.
And again, that feels like a small thing. To invite a friend to come along to a Christmas service feels like, it feels like a small thing in one regard, and yet on the other hand, it feels like a massive thing, and like, oh no, my life's going to end if this person says no.
Yeah,
which
could have a momentary embarrassment if they say no.
But again, when you think about, again, without wanting to make it too dramatic and as if we're the ones that are in control of it all, someone coming to a church service for the first time, hearing the gospel, hearing God speaking to them, his spirit working in it, that could be the thing which changes their life for eternity. And in the last couple of weeks, I've been filming and editing people's testimony videos, as we often have at Christmas, and that's a real privilege to hear those stories. But again, that's always a reminder of some of the people who are in our church family and have been for decades, and who have been such a blessing to so many others. Well, how did they first come along to church? It was, someone inviting them along. Last week on the podcast, John Kerr's testimony was there John's been around at church for, I don't know how long, decades.
2 or 3 years.
And
He's a young man.
He's
a young man still, yeah. But, you know, his sister had a big impact because she came to faith, and he thought, oh, she's mad. It's just one of her phases that she's going through. But actually that had such an impact on him that, you know, when he ended up seeing Billy Graham because he wanted to watch something else on the telly, you know, you can listen to him tell the story. But, you know, you sort of think of these knock-on effects of, you know, one seemingly insignificant conversation, you know, which might have prompted someone, humanly speaking, to come to church and come to faith, and then the impact that they have on so many other people's lives. And yeah, I think that's just a wonderful thing. And again, it's the fact that God uses us and uses these real organic human interactions and awkward conversations with your colleagues, and like interactions with your siblings where they're, you know, mocking you because you come to faith, or you go to church and you take it too seriously. Like the fact that God uses these things.
All woven in. And we have seen folks who've been invited to Christmas services who are now part of our church family, haven't we?
Yeah, I have. And looking back over the years, there's been a few folk like that. I can think about folk from 10 years ago who their first interaction with the Tron was a Christmas service, and now they're married and bringing their own kids to the church. And more recently too, we've had, you know, I think someone came along a couple of years ago, professed faith on Christmas Eve. So, you know, any Sunday is a great Sunday, isn't it? And we do believe, don't we, that what is happening on a Sunday is fundamentally supernatural, and the gospel's being proclaimed, and that is how God works to bring people from death to life. That's our conviction. And if that's our conviction, then our desire should be to get our friends along. And Christmas is a great time because Christmas is it's focusing on the incarnation, which in itself is wonderful and joyful. And but there's also, I think it's probably an easier invite than normal. Because it's Christmas, folk are perhaps more willing to come, and we don't know, this could be the first step on a journey to faith. And I think that's probably the way to see it, as a first step. And a good way in for folk to keep coming. And I think if folk are coming on over Christmas, then always have in your head, okay, what's the next thing? Let's bring them along to church in January, or let's bring them onto the life course in January, or whatever it is. Don't see Christmas as the end point. See it as the beginning, as a way in. And I think folk are probably more willing to say yes to a Christmas invite than most others. So it's a good way to flex our evangelistic muscles.
Inviting muscles. And if you mess it up, just invite them to church in January.
Yeah, that's fine.
Same gospel.
And people are not offended to be asked. I think they're quite pleased to be asked to come to something, and they're probably pleased you've asked them, that you care enough to invite them along to your church. So see it as doing a few evangelistic reps down at the gym and send some invites.
I mean, you'll have other stories of folks who've just been invited along and from life course or along to church in this last year. No,
absolutely. We've had there's a whole bunch of folk who have come to faith in the last year, and been brought along in all sorts of different ways. There is the occasional person who just finds us online and turns up, and they have a very warm welcome. They love being there, and they love coming along. So that happens, but also, church members inviting and bringing people along. We've had a whole stack of folk come to faith this last year. It's been super encouraging. And, just this evening we'll have our follow-up study with about a dozen folk who are fairly new to things. And, there's one of the guys who, he first came a couple of years ago. As it happened, he was thinking about Christian things and talking with his friend, and his friend knew about the Tron. Didn't come himself, but said, you should go to this church. So this friend who hadn't been to the Tron brought this guy, and he's been coming ever since and has come to faith. But his mum's just started coming, and that's been really encouraging. And what a joy to see the Lord working through families.
Paul Levy
Levy, I'd say.
Levy. Paul Levy, one year they released the Word Weekend Away, just talked about the huge privilege it was to be brought up in a Christian home, but actually also to encouraging folks, the students there, to think, those who'd not come from Christian, well, just think, well, you'd be starting a dynasty.
That's right.
One person who comes to faith.
Well, I think about my brother-in-law, who came to faith at university. He was the first member of his family to become a Christian. His brother then became a Christian. And then his mum became a Christian. And Paul and his brother are both now ministers. One's in California, the other's in Cambridgeshire. But they're now both pastors of churches and raising their families. That's a wonderful thing, isn't it? That the Lord does work like that.
And it can go up the generations as well sometimes as well.
Yeah.
It's starting a dynasty, it can pass on to your kids, but, like that example Paul was giving where, someone's mom's coming along. And again, thinking Christmas testimony is that a couple of years ago, Tom and Joan Moore did an interview. Their son, Dave, came to faith or just before he went to university. And it was through that they came to faith. And it's really exciting. And I think an encouragement to those of us who do have, non-Christian family members or, friends, that it can just grow and spread. And yeah.
That's right. I mean, one of the life course team, Iona, she was helping out, I think, in the January course. And first night she was there, had a really good time. Next day she was talking about it in the staff room. One of her colleagues said, "Oh, what's this you're talking about?"
Overheard, I think.
Overheard. Came along to week 2. Really enjoyed it. Started coming to church. Came along to the life course in September. Is now professing faith. I was sharing her story the other week on Sunday night, just showing some of the things that she had found about coming to church as a non-Christian and just being blown away by the welcome and coming face to face with the Lord Jesus and being convinced about his death and resurrection. And so there's a colleague who's come along, and let's see what the Lord does. But very encouraging.
Point being, as you said, there is a battle.
Yeah.
But the Lord is winning it, has won it. We're not losing. So services next week. In the morning, 10 a.m, a regular 10 a.m. service. You can still invite people to regular 10 a.m. services. Edward will be preaching from 2 Peter. And then this Sunday coming, the 7th, is our Festival of Christmas at 5 p.m. at Kelvin Grove, which kicks off the whole series of
the Christmas season.
Which will be just wonderful. Thank you for listening. Let's talk in politics.
Thank you.